Hey guys and girls, it's Natha Birch here, just reaching out to everyone with the Ask Me Anything section on today's Facebook. So just wanted to reach out and answer questions that you guys may have just on what's happening out there in the marketplace, what's happening in crypto world, and what is happening. So I put a post up this morning just asking what sort of questions would you like me to cover, just in case not too many of you were logged in this evening, but I'm just going to start reading through, and I encourage you, if you have any questions or things you want me to cover, just to post down there in the corner your questions. So just going to go from the top here. So what strategies are you considering to leverage the imminent collapse of the US dollar and its flow-on effects? So I've talked a bit about the GFD, which is what I call the global financial depression that's going to be upcoming. Basically, to understand, a lot of people ask me, how come you're so successful with property or whatever? I guess a lot of it comes down to understanding the actual system that we live in and the actual monetary supply system. And back in 2008, well, it all started back in 1971, when the gold standard got removed from the dollar, and the US dollar became the base currency of the world. In a short snapshot there, basically, for those of you that don't know, in 1971, the gold standard got removed, US dollar became a completely fiat currency, and we all hinge off that. Throughout the last 1,000 years, there's been over 10,000 different fiat currencies, which are backed by nothing. A fiat currency is just money which is printed with an infinite supply. The first one actually started back in China about 1,000 years ago, and they only ever last for around about 40 years in their timeline. I've studied all different currencies over the years. Looking at the system what we're in at the moment, this is the first time in the world where we've actually got every country that's sort of tied together to one currency, or most countries tied on the same currency. So what has happened over the course of each sort of year, and just to start off, I can see a lot of people are joining in today. None of this is financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. I always suggest you go and get independent third-party financial advice. All I am today is just a dude talking about some opinions and talking about weird and wacky stuff that can happen on the internet and whatnot. So, so looking at the dollar is what we've got now. Basically, over the course of the last 45 years or so, it's been pulled down to where it is at the moment, which I think we're going to see the death of the dollar coming in the next few years. We're right on the precipice of that happening. We're starting to see big signs of that happening. In 2008, we basically, if we go back and look through the course of decades from the 70s and up to where we are today, we've seen bubbles that have occurred. They've come from commodity bubbles, from oil bubbles. We've seen stock market bubbles. We've seen the tech bubbles. We've seen real estate bubbles. And I guess what we've got at the moment is it's a wash of fiat currency. We've got money that's being printed like never seen beforehand. Back in the old days, what they used to have to do is actually, get metal, put it into a coin, mint the coin, give it to someone, and so on and so forth. Now, what happened from there is they melted other metals in there to try and, water down the monetary supply. And then it went to printing notes and pieces of paper. And I guess nowadays all they do is just put a little digit there and add an extra zero on the end and print out more loans. And we're at a point now where it's a checkmate. It reminds me of on the movie Face Off, where Nicolas Cage and John Travolta are standing there with the gun point, because whoever pulls the trigger, they're all going to die. Looking at the financial system at the moment, properties, looking at the financial interest rates cannot go up. People ask me from property front what's going to happen with interest rates. They can move up and down a little bit, but if we go back to the RBA stats, and I've posted them on this page previously, and looking at interest rates over the course of the last decade, they've come down 17 times and I think up 5 times. We had an interest rate from the RBA here in Australia at 7.25% basis points going back in 2008, which quickly dropped down to by 4.25% to 3%. And that was, the central banks playing their hand and showing their hand, I guess, what they would do in the potential crisis. And here we are today in 2018. We can't increase interest rates. I don't think we've had interest rate rise for a period of about 6 or 8 years. It's only been on the way down. So where do I see the market heading, and where are the safe options for myself? In the past, people say that, saving is the important thing. You're taught to save money and use it for whatever. What we're going to see at the moment, what we're seeing is that people can't save up for anything because there's not enough money out there. Everyone's seeing more money. Everything's getting more expensive. It's a hidden tax, which is inflation. And there's a very good possibility that from this, we could end up into a hyperinflation scenario, which is what I actually predict will happen. Means that your savings and your capital that you're holding will actually become worthless. It's like if you have a cup of water or a cup of cordial and you just keep adding water to it, you're just watering it down to a point where it really has no value, it has no effect. And this is a point of where we're at in 2018. If we do increase interest rates marginally, I think if we see interest rates go up by 1% or anything over that, anywhere around the world, because if we look at every area of the market, you've got the stock market, which has businesses that are basically throwing money into an incinerator every week. We've got, lots of liquidity that's needed out there in the marketplace to keep the world moving around like it does today. If interest rates were to go up, the expenses would go up so great, and we would see a big disaster. And I think we're on the verge of that. What comes from that is anyone's game. However, what we saw back in 2008 is the interest rates go down. I just saw a question here from Riot. What do you think the government will do to bail in, and what do you recommend storing wealth in? Looking at what do I think the government will do? The government last time gave everyone $900 to go and buy themselves a TV and keep the world spinning around. We saw the what we need to see is money flowing throughout the system. We need to see. At the moment, we've got a construction boom in the country. We don't produce all that much stuff. China, whether that becomes the major player in the world, it's to be left unknown. We're seeing China produce. We're seeing countries like Australia, America, and whatnot. They're not really producing like they should. So it's a very interesting time that we're going into. I personally think that there's two markets will implode. One of these markets is the derivative market. That will be the biggest killer in the marketplace, in my view, is the derivative market. And also feel that the stock market is a ticking time bomb from all angles. If we look at places like property and stuff like that, obviously for those of you that know me from outside of that, property is something that I think is a very, very good store of wealth. If we went out to the marketplace in 2008 and 2009, what we saw happen in that time frame is that all the government intervention, central bank intervention, actually made property a very safe place. I think what we've seen over the last 26 months with APRA and stuff like that, they've actually tried to put in measures like policies, etc., which have done in turn what an interest rate rise would normally do. So from there, I think that property is a very safe place to be. I think in the short term, cash and capital, having cash and capital is important to have at hand. I think cryptocurrencies, they're an unknown out there. I think the thing that I do like about them is that they're unmanipulable, like the monetary supply that we deal with every day of the week, etc. So I think that they have a very good place, but no one's seen one of them go through a volatile market. We see volatile markets every week in the crypto space. I think commodities, precious metals and stuff like that are also, potential good safe haven storage of wealth as well. So for me, not having risky things that I'm doing at the moment, not pushing yourself from overstretching. I think those that are too over-leveraged or those that are too under-leveraged will equally be in a position. It's important to, ensure that you have the right team around you, have, good financial advisors. As I said, I can see there's people joining into this live stream at the moment. Make sure that you've got a financial advisor that understands the market, that understands the system that we live in, and not just one of those financial advisors that's out there, saying buy some of this or buying some of that, getting paid commissions. So cash for the short term. In the longer term, I think that the cash will get inflated away. and from an aspect of debt, I think it's important to have good debt. When I talk about debt, I mean stuff that's like attached to a property or something that can be inflated away. The reason why I do like property on that front is because it has a capital position that can be increased and a cash flow position that will be inflated as well. From a crypto perspective, I think that crypto has a very good, strong future ahead of it as well. So for me, as always, I like having cash in the bank, a little bit of it. I don't like banks and I don't like money, but it's important to get through any sort of tough times that you may see out there. I think it's important to also have exposure in other assets, whether it be precious metals, whether it be property, whether it be crypto. It's important to have all that, and they're the sort of things that I look at in my own personal investing strategy, and will continue to do so. I've got a question here from John. What does this all mean for property and property investors? Look, I think that it's fantastic. Like I've always said, from the notion of debt becomes relevant with inflation, and as we go through different cycles, if you were to see a hyperinflation would mean that you're paying off today's debt with tomorrow's dollar. Obviously, more money being out there in circulation, meaning that most people will get more money, but it won't appear that they're getting more money, and you can pay off those debts, obviously, with tomorrow's dollar. I got a question here from Phil. When considering coins prior to investing from a crypto front, I'm sure you'd do due diligence process, just like when you buy properties. Could you please discuss what you consider before buying coins? Yeah, so from a crypto side of things, personally, I have very invested in the crypto space, and I like to, buy different things. Obviously, this marketplace is very new, and it has a mind of its own, and it is a free market. There's not many free markets out there. There is some level of manipulation that I feel that happens in the crypto space, being it from whales and whatnot. Looking at the types of coins and things that I consider beforehand. So I've got a bit of a strategy where I like to invest in protocols. Protocols are things that are needed for other applications to play upon. And I absolutely hate anything that's centralized from the aspect of the crypto space. So things like Stellar and Ripple, I think they're shit and I don't invest in them personally, but by all means, that there's not financial advice and to obviously make your own decisions on what actions you do take. But I don't like anything centralized. Ripple, Stellar, those things, they can go out the window. I like protocol stuff like EOS, Ethereum, Neo, Ethos. There's stuff that's got like a underlying fundamental that people will need. You need to use that to build your application on. The reason why I like that is that obviously being a new marketplace, it is something that's fresh. There is going to be a lot of volatility in it, and it is going to be a bumpy ride. But these things will, there will be a lot of them which will stand the test of time. Obviously through, if we were to see something like the .com era that would come to the crypto space. So I also have different investing strategies when it comes to my own personal crypto side of things. I do have mining. I minimize risk from mining the coins. Obviously, big advocate of getting everything that's below market value. So I like to buy things that are cheap and are as of good value. So I do minimize my risk by mining from one aspect of my portfolio. The other aspect of it is that I have key projects that I'm heavily invested in. Those coins and whatnot and the tokens that I hold, I've done extensive research in, understand lots of things, even communicate with the creators of the projects and be a part of their community as well. So some of those projects are that. And then I also have a part of my portfolio where I guess you never know what's going to happen, right? Last year, I'd seen stuff like Ripple, like it shouldn't be there. I personally wouldn't invest, doesn't matter if it's going to go up 1,000x personally. But you've got stuff like Verge, for example, picked it up at 20% of a cent, so 0.002%, and it went up to 40 cents. I'm not a fan of Verge, but if I throw $500 on a few of these things, for me personally, I've seen some fantastic returns from that perspective. If I do see 100x or 1,000x out of my portfolio of assets that I hold, what I do is I actually go and discard of them once they hit a peak period where I think, this has no potential. If it goes any further, it's going to overtake Ethereum or it's going to overtake Dash or it's going to overtake Bitcoin, it can't go up any higher. So I'd swap it for a native currency, be it Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, and obviously get my position and then use those tokens to go on and spread my risk into other projects such as ICOs and whatnot. Just having a look here. What are my top 5 coins that I would buy today for longer term gains? From Tommy. Tommy, yeah, look, I think everyone wants to look in this space and go, when am I getting my Lambo? When are the coins going to go to the moon and all that sort of stuff? Look, I like to invest for the long term. I don't like to speculate on stuff. Some of my big sort of positions, my favorite one is EOS, and this, as once again, it's not financial advice. It's not something that I'm saying go and buy these projects. I did get in very cheap. I do have a sizable holding of them, but there's projects that are protocols. Protocols are big, and I'm a big fan of masternodes nowadays. So, for example, we've just seen the marketplace go backwards in the last 48 hours or whatever, and seeing 10% taken off the market cap. I picked up a coin called Vivo coin. If you go and check out the coin market cap, you'll see that coin has gone up like 100% today. I didn't buy that for any specific reason. I picked that up for the purpose of making a masternode. It is a fork of Dash, and we know where Dash has gone. It doesn't have a good team at the moment. The reason why it has gone up is because the development is starting to happen out there in the Vivo community. But the reason why I like the masternode coins is that you're going to continuously earn an income from them, from having those coins staked away, and you get a return on them. So I removed the word income and changed it to a return, and that's why I personally like those type of coins. With it, just having a look at some more questions here that I got. When Moon, your question is as good as mine. No one really knows. It's a bit of a buy into the right assets or the right tokens and wait for them to go up. For the knowledge hunters, what sites and sources provide you with reliable, accurate information, and do you subscribe to? I haven't seen any sort of sites out there personally myself where I go, this is where I'm going to be the holy grail. It's important to continuously learn, continuously grow, continuously adapt, and seek out the information and build your own strategy around what's going to work best for you from that side of things. I spend about 20 hours a day awake and only sleep for about 4 hours. And when I do go to sleep, I put the phone next to my ear and play YouTube in my ear. Looking at just YouTube sites, Facebook. There's lots of communities out there. Depends specifically what sort of information you're after as well. Just having a look here, what cryptos are good for 2018, what cryptos are good for 2018, and get my crystal ball out. Look, I think there's a lot of cool projects out there. It's still very early days. A lot of these projects, what we're going to be seeing is that they've only gone to ICO mid-2017, later part of 2017. They have a roadmap of 12 to 18 months in order to actually deliver their projects. And from that, we're only starting to see some of those projects come to life now. And when they get adapted in day-to-day life, that's where I think we're going to see the real impact changing how business is transacted, how lives are transacted. We're going to see the community and the world go from being more of a centralized governance, controlled, suppressed human being civilization to more of a peer-to-peer, personal sort of environment. That's what I would hope to see from this movement of the crypto space. Whereas, looking at the projects are really coming out this year. So I've lost my train of thought. So just having a look through from the questions, I'll finish with what I had earlier. Just going to go through reading your questions now. Giddy up, thumbs up. Quick question, who should I go through if I want to accept this currency from our clients for a business? Look, through some of my businesses, through like the B-Investor group of companies and whatnot, we're actually looking at taking on merchant facilities called BitPay in order to be able to accept crypto. and trying to utilize and adapt it into a real world scenario of people being able to buy property and stuff like that using crypto. But check out BitPay, Bill. I think that is a something that looks good and exciting from our side. Just having a look here, Brian, how do you think the Australian government will do a bail-in? If so, where would you recommend storing wealth? I think I covered that at the start. I don't recommend anything. I'm just a dude here with a view and explaining what I'm doing myself personally, guys. What is the upcoming advisory going to involve that you're speaking about a week ago? I'm going to have to leave that with you guys to keep pondering. Should have some news out shortly as to how I'm going to be able to help you guys navigate yourself through this new world that we're finding ourselves in, which is the crypto world. But I will be covering off every area, whether it be from the start as being the system that we're in, whether it be from technical stuff, whether it be from an IT point of view, whether it be analysing actual projects that are out there in the marketplace, whether it be from setting up mining, whether it be from setting up master nodes, etc., etc. So we'll be covering off basically every area and sharing my journey as far as how I've been able to, sort of make myself very, very wealthy out of this crypto space. Have I looked at WAN chain? I've heard about WAN chain. I haven't got into WAN chain, so I'm not as invested as what I could be. I hear that it's going to be a very good project, but obviously with all the hype around, you're going to be buying it on an exchange, you're going to be paying a lot more than what the early adopters that got into the ICO would be. So from that point of view, it's just a matter of waiting till it hits the exchanges, which I think should be, if it hasn't already, coming up very shortly. And I haven't got too much else on that front. John says, stay away from lending platforms. Do I like credits? I actually have a few of my mates that got into credits. I just missed the credits ICO when it came out. I think that's already had about a 4x or a 5x return on it so far. So the people that got into ICO are very, very good. As for buying it now, I kick myself. I can't buy every project. I've got probably about 300 to 400 different projects that I'm on in coins and stuff like that. Cool, got an ICO, yep, 5x, cool. I guess leaving it over to you guys. You've got me here on live stream. What sort of questions do you have for me at the moment? If we see a GFD, how will it affect Australian property and how can we protect our assets or best position for ourselves? Look, Roger, I already covered part of that at the start of the Facebook Live, so I don't want to bore the guys that have already been here from the start too much. But yeah, I think that the property market in Australia will do well from it. Maybe not so much in the early points of the GFD. If we go back and look in 2008, 2009, when the GFC really took its full force, what we saw was the intervention from the central banks and the policymakers actually made it a ripe ground for property to actually explode, and that's obviously what we're seeing at the moment of the last 4 or 5 years with property prices going up has been a result of the stimulus and the decisions that are made back in that point in time. I did have a question beforehand. I can't find it here. I encourage you guys. I'm running out of questions to answer today. But there was a point about coins and strategies and stuff like that that I didn't see beforehand. I think a lot of people sit here and talk about, oh, this coin's gone up or that coin's gone up. A point I'd like to reach out and mention to you guys is, what do you value coins in? Do you value them based on an Aussie dollar? Do you value them based on a US dollar, or do you base them on a Satoshi? So I don't know, a lot of you, if you're trading in Satoshis or whatnot, when I first got into it, I made sure that I was looking at the opportunity cost, as if I was actually taking not just the profit, if I'd have left my coins as a native currency and not actually send them to an ICO or not send them into trade or to buy into a certain prototype or project, what would my position be? And I think a lot of people too often look at, what the actual dollar that they can sell it for, but not many exchanges will actually take, especially if you're here in Australia and you're watching and you've got, places like CoinSpot, you're trading, you can't send, high performance blockchain in there. You can't send EOS back in there. You have to go and change it back into a native currency, be it Bitcoin or Litecoin or even Dogecoin. I don't know why they take that one. But when you're trading, you need to make sure that you're understanding what Satoshis are, really to value it. I think out there in crypto land, there's a lot of people out there just hyping up shit. 2 weeks ago, they were a tradie, or they were a person working in some other industry, and now they're suddenly a crypto expert, but without looking at all the different angles of it. So from that front, if you guys have no more questions, I think I am going to leave today's Facebook Live as that. Thanks a lot for joining in. Make sure to keep asking questions away. I'll try and answer what I can, how I can, when I can, in order to help you guys benefit out of this exciting space. We'll catch up soon. Have an awesome day.